The sharp scent of pine needles and ritual smoke stung my nose as I kept my gaze low, watching my worn leather boots sink quietly into the forest floor with each uneasy step. Around me, the pack moved like a single living force, strong, united, whole without me. Their excited whispers, soft chatter, and rustling movements blended into a wall of sound that only made my silence feel heavier. The autumn air carried a crisp bite, but the real cold was buried deep inside me as I trailed at the edge of the procession, part of the group, yet never truly belonging. "Keep up, Raya," someone muttered without even glancing back. That was my place in life, Raya. The rejected Omega, the wolf without a mate, the broken one they kept around out of obligation. The sacred grove rose ahead, ancient trees clawing toward the darkening sky like twisted skeletal hands. We entered this hallowed ground only once every decade, either to name the next Alpha or to choose a new Luna. Tonight was historic, Kael. Our Alpha would finally choose his mate, the woman destined to stand beside him and lead our pack into whatever future awaited. I clutched the silver pendant my grandmother had pressed into my palm before she passed. "When the world sees weakness in you, remember water wears down stone not through force but through persistence," she had whispered. The pendant was simple, a crescent moon with a tiny pearl resting in its curve. It had been in our family for generations, despite the fact that we'd never held any real place of power. My fingers traced its familiar shape while I remembered the way her eyes never looked at me with pity, only with a quiet certainty I still didn't understand. The council had selected 12 potential mates for Kael, 12 powerful, beautiful, accomplished she-wolves who embodied everything a Luna should be: strength, fertility, intelligence, leadership. And then there was me, the 13th name on the list, a cruel joke crafted by Drevan, our beta, who considered my presence in the pack an insult to the bloodline. "The ceremony needs a full roster," he'd said with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Raya will participate. She can carry the sacred crown." No one objected. Why would they? I was good for simple tasks, nothing more. A wolf whose shifts were incomplete and agonizing, whose howl cracked like a wounded thing a girl tolerated only because pack law forbade exiling a blood-borne member without cause. My parents had died in a territory skirmish when I was young, leaving me in the reluctant care of the pack. As we stepped into the clearing at the grove's heart, I felt eyes settle on me, not with anger, which would have at least meant they noticed me, but with pure indifference. The pack began taking their positions in the ritual circle movement, smooth and practiced. The potential Luna stood proudly at the front, their dresses catching the last amber light of the fading day. I recognized Mirael with her confident stance and dark, glossy hair, Arya with her practiced smile, Nysa with her warrior's posture. Each one radiated power and promise, each a perfect match for the Alpha who had dragged our pack back into prosperity after years of decline. Raya Drevan called, his voice snapping me out of my thoughts. The crown. I approached the ancient stone altar at the center where the sacred crown lay resting on velvet. It was beautiful and terrifying. A silver circlet inlaid with moonstones, carved with runes so old even our historians could only speculate about their meaning. Legend claimed it was forged under the first wolf moon, when our ancestors received the gift of shifting. "Don't touch it directly," Drevan warned, his tone edged with threat. "Use the cloth." My hands shook as I carefully lifted the crown with the ceremonial cloth. Its weight surprised me for something so delicate it felt as heavy as a mountain. A pulse of something ancient hummed through it, resonating with a strange flutter deep inside my chest. The ceremonial drums began to beat just as Kyle stepped into the clearing. Even with my fractured bond to my wolf, I felt the raw power rolling off him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes holding the wild heart of the forest itself, he moved with the effortless grace of a predator at the top of the food chain. His dark hair was pushed back, highlighting the sharp, chiseled lines of his face. At 32, he was in his prime. Under his rule, our territory expanded, Our alliances strengthened and our enemies learned to fear us. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment, and I looked away, quickly thrown off by the intensity there. It wasn't the first time I'd caught him staring with an expression I could never decipher. Curiosity maybe, though more likely the same confusion everyone felt toward the pack's broken Omega. "We gather under the witness of the moon," Ceres announced, her aged voice somehow filling the clearing. "To choose she who will stand beside our Alpha, she who will guide the next generation, she who will strengthen our pack." I stood silently with the crown as each of the 12 candidates stepped forward. Each declared her claim. Each recited victories and displayed strength. The pack howled their approval, again and again. My arms burned from holding the crown so steady, but I didn't dare shift my weight. Now Ceres continued, "Our Alpha will make his choice known. The sacred crown will rest upon the head of she who shall become Luna." Kael stepped forward, expression unreadable. The clearing went silent, electric with tension. Kael's gaze moved over each candidate, slow and deliberate, as if weighing every soul in the clearing. "I have considered every worthy woman standing before me," he said, his deep voice rolling through the air like distant thunder. "Each one would bring strength to our pack." The candidates straightened, hope tightening their posture. I kept my eyes fixed on the ground, all my focus on keeping the sacred crown steady in my hands. "But a Luna is not chosen solely for what she offers the pack," Kael continued. A hush fell. "She is chosen because she completes the Alpha, because together they become more than either could be alone." He paused, and the anticipation around us thickened until it felt like the trees themselves were holding their breath. "I have not found that completion among the candidates." A ripple of shock tore through the pack. Ceres's eyes widened sharply, and Drevin strode forward, anger darkening his expression. "Alpha, the law demands you choose. I know the law." Kael cut in, his voice hard and final. "And I will choose. But first, a test." He turned toward me, and my heart kicked painfully against my ribs. "Bring the crown forward, Omega." My limbs felt wooden as I stepped toward him, painfully aware of the stairs on my ragged clothes, the dirt under my nails, the thin scar along my left cheek. Left there years ago when Mador's son decided to remind the broken wolf of her place. As I approached Kael, I kept my eyes lowered exactly as someone of my rank was expected to. "Look at me." His command was soft, but it rooted me in place. I lifted my gaze and met his, startled to find no contempt there, only something searching, something intense. "Do you know why the crown is sacred, Raya?" Hearing my name in his voice sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. I swallowed. It's said to reveal the true nature of whoever wears it." He nodded once. "And I wonder," he murmured, "what your true nature is." Before I could form a response, Drevin cut in sharply. "Alpha, you cannot mean." Kael silenced him with a single look. Then he turned back to me. "Remove the cloth." I froze. "But I was told not to touch it," he said, his tone gentle but unyielding. "That's an order." A collective gasp tore through the crowd. For an Omega to touch the sacred crown was unthinkable. Some even believed it could be damaged by someone like me. "This is ridiculous," Miriel hissed. "She'll taint it with her weakness." I hesitated, torn between years of being told I was nothing and the command of my Alpha. "Trust me," Kael whispered, low enough for only me to hear. With trembling hands I set the cloth aside. My fingertips brushed the cool silver. A bolt of energy ripped through me. I nearly dropped the crown. The moonstones flared to life, pulsing like heartbeats. A chorus of gasps rose as the crown began to shift, its silver brightening until it glowed like captured moonlight, the stones deepening into a vivid electric blue. "What's happening?" someone whispered. The energy surged through me, like wildfire, igniting every nerve. My wolf lurched awake within me, not the fractured, incomplete creature I'd known all my life, but something ancient and powerful clawing upward. pain tore through my bones as they began to shift. "She's transforming," Saris cried out. Here now, without the full moon, I collapsed to my knees, still clutching the crown as my body changed. Yet this time the shift didn't feel wrong or broken. It felt right, whole. My vision sharpened, colors exploding into clarity. I could hear every heartbeat in the clearing, feel the pack's fear and confusion vibrating through the air. And then, as suddenly as it began, the shift stopped. I was human again, but nothing inside me felt the same. My wolf was there, solid and strong, no longer the stunted shadow I had lived with for years. Kael knelt in front of me, awe widening his eyes. I knew it, he breathed. All these years. I knew they kept you from becoming who you truly are. What's happening to me? I whispered, shocked by the strength in my own voice. The crown reveals truth, Saris said as she approached her steps cautious. And it has revealed yours, child. Kael gently lifted the crown from my shaking hands, and before anyone could object, set it onto my head. It settled against my blonde hair, as if it had always belonged there. The moment it touched my brow, a wave of energy burst outward, sweeping through the clearing. Several wolves dropped to their knees in instinctive submission. Impossible, Dravan breathed. She's nothing but a broken Omega. No, Saris said, her voice trembling with awe. She is Luna. Kael extended his hand toward me, locking his gaze with mine. The crown has chosen, he declared to the pack, and so have I. When I placed my hand in his, feeling the certainty and heat of his grip, I understood everything I had ever believed about myself. Everything they had told me. It had all been a lie. The rejected Omega no longer existed. In her place stood someone unfamiliar, someone I was only beginning to understand. And as the pack stared at me in stunned silence, I felt the first flicker of a power that would reshape not only my fate, but the fate of every wolf in our territory. The walk back to the pack house blurred into a haze of hushed whispers and sidelong glances. Where I had once followed at the very back, unnoticed and unimportant, I now walked beside Kael, his steady presence, equal parts comfort and danger. The sacred crown still rested on my head, lighter than it had ever felt in my hands, yet grounding me to the earth, with a weight that was more spiritual than physical. Every step felt new, as if the ground beneath me had changed along with everything else. They fear what they can't explain. Kael murmured, his voice low, just for me, while unease rippled through the wolves ahead. His hand brushed mine once, twice, each time sending a sharp current racing up my arm. I don't even understand it myself, I admitted, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. Inside me, my wolf paced awake, powerful, alert. Not the frail, trembling thing I had lived with for years, but something ancient and alive. The sensation was overwhelming, like sharing my skin with a stranger. The pack house came into view, a sprawling fortress of timber and stone built into the mountainside. Normally, returning from a Luna selection meant celebration that lasted until dawn. Tonight, silence clung to the pack like a fog. Alpha Rowan called sharply as we reached the entrance. His expression was carefully controlled, but I could smell the sharp sting of anger rolling off him. The council must meet at once to address this unexpected situation. Kael's face remained calm, though a faint tension pulsed under the surface. The council will convene in the morning, Dravan. Tonight, tradition stands. But the girl Dravan began. My chosen Luna. Kael corrected his voice, dropping into a low, dangerous growl that made several wolves bow their heads instinctively. And she will be treated with the respect owed to her place. A pause. Am I understood? Dravan's jaw flexed, but he bowed. Of course, Alpha. As we entered the great hall, a wave of silence washed over us. The massive room with its towering beams and roaring stone hearth had always made me feel small. I used to hide in its shadows, hoping no one would notice I existed. Now Kael guided me toward the raised platform where 2 ornate chairs waited the Alpha's seat, and beside it, the Luna's throne. "I can't," I whispered, panic tightening around my ribs. "I don't know how to be what they expect." Kale's hand pressed lightly at the small of my back, steady, warm. "You don't have to be what they want," he said quietly. "Just be who you are, who you're becoming. That's who the crown chose." I swallowed hard and let him guide me forward. When I sat in the Luna's chair, the hall fell utterly still. It felt wrong, like I was wearing clothes that belonged to someone braver, someone worthy. Ceres approached the platform, studying me with a new intensity. She held a small, silver-inlaid wooden box. When she opened it, a silver goblet rested inside, filled with dark red liquid that smelled of wine, and something earthier, something primal. "The Luna's first cup," Ceres explained. "Wine mixed with the Alpha's blood. It symbolizes the binding of your spirits, your wolves, your destinies." My hand trembled as I lifted the goblet. In the firelight, the liquid appeared almost black. Kael watched me, silent, waiting, testing me. Hesitation would mark me as weak. Refusal would be rejection. So I drank. The burn hit first sharp and hot, but as the warmth spread through my chest, something deeper stirred, a connection that sparked between Kael and me, like 2 wires finally touching. I could feel his essence blending with mine, strengthening the strange bond that had been growing since the moment I touched the crown. The pack recognizes Raya as Luna. Ceres announced, her voice echoing across the hall. "May she bring wisdom, strength, and prosperity." There should have been cheers, howls, celebration. Instead, a thin, uncomfortable silence hung in the air, broken only by reluctant murmurs of "To the Luna" and the soft clink of cups. The feast continued with forced politeness. Kael spoke quietly with the elders. I picked at food I couldn't taste, painfully aware of the whispers and stares. The 12 rejected candidates sat clustered at a distant table, their expressions shifting between shock and pure resentment. Muriel especially stared at me with undisguised venom, her dark eyes never leaving my face. "You should eat." Kael spoke softly when he noticed my untouched plate. "You'll need your strength." There was a shade in his voice that made warmth crawl up my cheeks. A bond between an Alpha and his Luna usually ended with a mating ceremony, a thought that stirred fear and a sudden dizzying kind of thrill in me. I forced myself to take a bite of roasted meat, though it tasted like dust. Why me? I finally asked the question that had been burning since the sacred grove. You could have chosen any of them. Strong wolves, respected contenders. Why choose the broken Omega? Kael's expression shifted, the harshness of his face softening into something almost gentle. "You were never broken, Raya," he said quietly. "You were hidden." His voice dipped even lower. "And you were never an Omega." Before I could speak, the doors of the great hall slammed open. A group of mud-streaked wolves rushed in tension, clinging to them like smoke. The sharp scent of blood and unfamiliar wolves rolled through the hall, silencing everyone. "Border Patrol," Kael said, rising. The leader hurried forward and dropped to one knee before the platform. "Alpha," he breathed, chest heaving. "The northern pack crossed our boundary. They've taken the hunting grounds near Black Rock Valley." Kael's face hardened. "Casualties." "2 injured. They'll live. We pushed them back, but they left this." He held up a blood-smeared scrap of fabric, marked with a jagged mountain symbol. "The Northern Alpha says he wants to renegotiate territory now that you've chosen a Luna." The meaning hit the room like a blow. They smelled weakness. In me. "Tell the Northern Alpha I'll meet him," Kael said, his voice echoing. "Tomorrow at midday, at the border stone." As the patrol withdrew, the air shifted from forced celebration to steel-sharp vigilance. Territory fights between packs often ended in carnage, and the northern wolves were notorious for it. Under the previous Alpha, they had stolen 3 of our valleys before Kael reclaimed them in blood. "I should prepare the warriors." Dravan said, his earlier hostility forgotten in the face of danger. Kale nodded. Choose 20 of our strongest. This is a meeting, not a battle. Not yet. The hall slowly emptied. Kale turned to me. Come, he said, offering his hand. I hesitated, then placed mine in his. He led me from the great hall and up the grand staircase toward the private suites. My pulse hammered as we approached the Alpha's quarters rooms I had never imagined I'd enter. The traditional first night between Alpha and Luna loomed terrifying and strangely magnetic, but instead of the bedroom, he guided me into a smaller room connected to his suite, a quiet sitting chamber with a hearth books lining the walls and a wide window framing the forest. He shut the door. We were finally alone. You have questions, he said, pouring amber liquor from a crystal decanter. Hundreds, I admitted, taking the glass. The sacred crown was still on my head. I reached up to touch it. Can I remove this? It's yours now, he said. But yes, set it aside when you want. I lifted the crown carefully and placed it on a side table. Without its weight, I felt stripped bare, as if I could vanish back into who I used to be. You said I was never an Omega, I began. What did you mean? Kale settled into the chair across from me, his massive frame filling the small room. What do you know about your parents, Raya? Almost nothing. I said, they died in a border fight when I was 4. The pack took me in because abandoning blood-born cubs is forbidden. His expression darkened. That's what you were told. A cold ripple slid down my spine. What's the truth? Your mother was Luna of the Eastern Pack, he said quietly. Your father was their Alpha. The glass nearly slipped from my fingers. That's impossible. Someone would have told me. You were meant to learn when you came of age. But everyone who knew either died or was forced into silence. Why? I whispered. Because your parents didn't die in a border clash, he said. They were murdered. By wolves from our own pack. The world lurched violently beneath me. But why would they do it, I asked. Power, Kale said simply. Fear. The Eastern and Western packs are packs spent generations at each other's throats. Your parents were the ones who negotiated a peace treaty, a merging of territories. Not everyone wanted peace. I set the untouched drink aside, my hands shaking too hard to hold it. How do you even know all this? You would have been a kid. My father was Alpha then, Kyle said quietly. He discovered the conspiracy too late to save your parents. But he found you hiding in the forest. My breath hitched. He brought you here, changed your name, buried your identity so deep no one could find it. He was afraid the conspirators would come for you if they knew you survived. And what happened to them? I asked, my voice sounding far away. What happened to the ones who murdered my family? My father executed the ones he could prove were guilty, Kale said. But he always believed more were involved. Wolves he couldn't expose. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the crushing truth. So I was never. You were born to lead. Raya, Kale said softly. You're the daughter of 2 powerful Alpha bloodlines. But someone made sure your wolf never rose. Something was done to suppress it. To keep you weak. A mixture of herbs, most likely, given when you were too young to remember. His jaw tightened. By the time my father realized it, the damage seemed permanent. Until the crown, I whispered, understanding, hitting me like a pulse of light. He nodded. The sacred crown exposes truth. It shattered whatever spell or medicine was caging your wolf. And you knew. My voice trembled. All this time, I suspected, he admitted. My father told me everything before he died, made me swear to protect you, but without proof. I had no way to restore you to who you truly were. Not until today. I stood abruptly, moving to the window. Outside, the moon hung full and bright, silvering the pack compound below. Wolves moved through the grounds, preparing for tomorrow's standoff with the northern pack. Who, I asked, my voice hardening. Who in this pack betrayed mine? Kyle was silent for a long, heavy moment. I have suspicions. but nothing I can swear on. I turned to face him. Drevan, I said slowly. You think it might be him? He was young, Kyle answered carefully. But his father Madar was my father's beta. His death right after your parents' murder. I never believed it was coincidence. A cold, sharp anger rose in me. My newly awakened wolf growled inside, sensing the old betrayal. That's why you made it public, I said. Why you had me touch the crown in front of everyone. He inclined his head. I needed to watch the room, to see who looked afraid instead of surprised. His gaze locked with mine, steady, intense, unflinching. And I needed to break whatever held your true nature captive. To make me your Luna, I said, trying to understand all of it. To give you back what was stolen, he corrected. Choosing you as Luna, that was mine alone, a decision I made long before today. The depth in his voice made my heartbeat stumble. You don't even know me, I whispered. I've watched you for years, Raya, he said, his voice low. I saw how you endured their cruelty with dignity, how you protected the ones beneath you, even when no one protected you. Your compassion, your quiet power. His words hit harder than any revelation. You're wrong if you think I don't know you. My throat tightened. He had seen me, truly seen me, when I believed I was invisible, especially to him. I turned back to the window, unable to face the emotion burning in his eyes. Tomorrow, I said, shifting the subject, the Northern Pack. They're testing you because of me. No, Kyle said. They're testing us. He corrected me quietly. And they'll realize soon enough just how wrong they are. What do you need me to do? I asked, surprising even myself with how steady my voice sounded. Kyle moved to stand beside me at the window, close enough that the heat from his body brushed against my skin like a living flame. Be who you're becoming, he said. The crown woke your wolf, but your strength is still new, untested. Tonight you need rest. He nodded toward a door, clearly meant for sleeping quarters separate from his own. Tomorrow will bring enough battles. I took a step toward the door, but a thought tightened around me like a hand. You said my parents were negotiating peace, a merging of lands. Kale nodded immediately, understanding where my mind had gone. History has a way of repeating itself, he said. Then we finish what they couldn't, I replied, a new clarity firming my words. For them, and for what might come next. Approval flashed in Kyle's eyes, mixed with something warmer, heavier, something that made my breath catch. Rest well, Luna, he murmured. Tomorrow we face our first test as one. Sleep didn't come. My mind spun with every revelation, pulling half-formed memories to the surface whenever my eyes shut. A woman's soft laugh. A man's strong arms lifting me. Another forest one I hadn't seen since childhood. Real memories or desperation filling the void I couldn't tell. My wolf paced inside me, restless and powerful after years of being chained down. Dawn finally broke, pale gold seeping through the window. I rose and found clothes waiting, nothing like the plain garments I'd always worn. These were Luna attire, deep blue leather pants and a fitted jacket, dyed the same shade as the moonstone that had transformed in the crown. I dressed quickly, the fine leather molding to me, almost instinctively fitting not only my body, but the person I was becoming. A gentle knock. When I opened the door, a young healer stood there. Luna, she said, softly lowering her gaze. Kyle asked me to tend to you this morning. The title still felt unreal. Thank you, Lena, but I don't think... She cut in gently. Your wolf is newly awakened. I brought herbs to ease the transition. I froze. What kind of herbs? Kyle's warning echoed in my mind. Herbs had once been used to cage me. Lena seemed to understand immediately. Nothing harmful, Luna. Only strengthening blends. Rosemary for clarity. A very small dose of wolf's bane for control. I prepared everything myself. Something earnest in her expression eased the knot in my chest. I stepped back, letting her enter. As she brewed the mixture, her eyes flicked up. You don't seem surprised, I observed. About what happened yesterday. I'm a healer, Lena said softly. I've sensed something different in your wolf for years. Not weakness, dormancy. She paused. Some of us suspected you were more than others claimed. Some of you, I echoed. A faint smile touched her lips. Not everyone followed Dravan's lead in how they treated you. Some of us paid attention. The thought of hidden allies warmed something deep inside me. As I drank the bitter tea, I felt my wolf settle, less frantic, more balanced, moving closer to my human self instead of pulling away. The Alpha is waiting in the strategy room, Lena said as she gathered her supplies. The northern delegation has been spotted near the border. I thanked her and walked through the pack house. Wolves watched me differently now. Some with new respect, others with unease. They tried and failed to hide. The crown, once again resting on my head, reminded me there was no going back to being unseen. The strategy room buzzed with activity as I stepped inside. Maps covered the main table and Kael stood at the head of it, deep in discussion with Yorn Kalev Dren and the rest of his senior warriors. Kael looked up the moment I stepped inside and the entire room fell silent. Luna, he said, acknowledging me with a steadiness that sent a low hum through the gathered wolves. His gaze swept over my appearance, clear approval flickering in his eyes. I moved to stand beside him, catching the way Dravan shifted uneasily, as if my presence scraped against old instincts he didn't want exposed. We've received confirmation that Northern Alpha Varek is bringing 15 wolves, Kael explained, pointing to the marked positions across the map. We'll meet them at the border stone with an equal number. And if it's a trap, one of the senior warriors asked. Our scouts are stationed here. And here, Kael said, marking both ridges with sharp taps of his finger. If the northern pack tries to flank us or close in, we'll know immediately. What do they want? I asked, studying the terrain. Dravan let out a dismissive scoff. The same thing they always want: territory, resources, leverage. Maybe, Kael replied, but their timing hints at something more deliberate. His eyes slid toward me with meaning. They waited until now, I murmured, understanding. Until after the Luna selection. They believe we're vulnerable, Kael confirmed. A few wolves glanced away, uncomfortable with the truth being spoken aloud. So Alpha Varek is testing us, I said. Testing you. Because of me. Kael nodded. This meeting is no longer just about land. It's about respect. About proving the pack is still strong, I said quietly despite unexpected changes. A faint smile curved his mouth. Exactly. The trip to the border stone took nearly an hour. We cut through thick forest, the scent of pine rising sharply as our procession moved in silence. The clearing opened around a massive boulder carved with ancient pack sigils, markers older than any Alpha still living. The northern delegation was already there. Their formation seemed relaxed, but every wolf stood alert beneath the surface. At the center was Alpha Varek, broad-scarred and sharp-eyed. The type of wolf who didn't bother hiding the violence in his posture. His gaze locked onto me, instantly interest flashing like a blade being unsheathed. Kael, he called. So the rumors were true. You finally chose your Luna. Our wolves formed a wide semicircle around theirs, Kael and I positioned at the very center. I kept my shoulders straight, chin lifted, projecting more confidence than I felt. Varek Kael returned evenly. You crossed into our hunting grounds without invitation. Just making sure the boundaries remain clear, Varek said with a cold grin. Especially in transitional times. His eyes swept over me again. Though I admit your choice surprised me. We heard your pack valued strength. The insult cracked through the clearing like frost. Kael went still beside me, fury rippling through him like heat, but his face never changed. The crown chose, he replied, as it always has. A flicker of surprise or disbelief shivered across Varek's scars. The crown, he repeated, studying me with new focus. An older wolf leaned in and whispered something to him. Whatever it was made Varek's expression shift from arrogance to calculation. "I propose a new agreement," Varek said abruptly. "Merging the river basin hunting grounds. Shared access." Dravan stepped forward. "Those lands have been ours for generations. Why share what we already own?" Because Varek replied, smiling like a predator, "I offer information in return." His gaze pinned me in place. Information about a certain Eastern bloodline believed to have been wiped out. My breath locked. Kyle stepped subtly closer, his shoulder brushing mine, a silent show of unity. "What could you possibly know about that?" Kyle asked, voice calm but edged with steel. Varek lifted his hands in a mock gesture of diplomacy. "Deaths of an alpha pair rarely stay buried, especially when those deaths involve internal betrayal." Cold washed through me. My father was alpha. Then Varek continued. "He kept records that could be shared in a proper exchange. Records meant for diplomacy," Kale countered sharply. "Not rushed out during a border standoff." "Of course," Varek said lightly. "But perhaps your Luna prefers the truth sooner rather than later." His smile sharpened. "The truth about her parents' deaths." Shock rippled through both delegations. Wolves stared, some confused, others wide-eyed. Dravan's face went chalk white. "You've been misinformed," Kyle said, voice low and lethal. The air thickened. My pulse hammered, and Varek watched me like I was the center of a war he'd been waiting years to ignite. Kale answered with icy calm. "My Luna's parents died in a border dispute when she was a child. A tragedy far too common among our kind." Varek's grin only deepened. "Is that the version she was given?" Fascinating. His attention cut toward me like a blade. "Tell me, Luna, wouldn't you rather know the real story? I can share exactly what my father documented about the night the Eastern Pact's leadership was erased. The hunger to know, truly know my parents' fate, curled inside me like a fist. But beneath Varek's offer, I could feel the trap. He wanted to pry me away from Kyle, to crack open the Pact's unity from its center. "I already know enough truth," I said, steadying my breath. "I know who I am, and I know wolves who use past tragedies as bargaining chips don't deserve new alliances." A ripple of approval moved through our ranks like a shift of wind. Varek's smirk faltered. "You speak boldly for someone who was treated as a shattered omega only yesterday." His voice sharpened. "But pretty speeches don't prove a Luna's strength. Power does." Kale's growl rumbled low, dangerous. "If it's a show of power you want, you're seconds from getting one." Varek lifted his hands in mock surrender. "No need for hostility between alphas. I simply point out that traditions exist to test a Luna's worth." His gaze locked onto me, again unblinking. "The trial of blood, perhaps, to settle any lingering doubts." My stomach tightened. The trial of blood, ancient, brutal, rarely invoked, meant hunting alone, bringing down prey with no aid, and sharing the lifeblood with her alpha before the pack. Deadly even for seasoned wolves. Almost unheard of for someone like me, newly awakened, untested. "That trial is an internal matter," Kale said sharply. "Not something you dictate." "Of course," Varek replied smoothly. "I simply assumed." Considering the unusual circumstances, his eyes slid toward Drevin and several others who avoided my gaze, "that you might welcome a way to silence your own pack's whispers." Before Kale could answer, I stepped forward. "I accept the trial." Kale whipped toward me, shock cutting through his composure. "Raya." "A Luna makes her own choices," I murmured low, so only he could hear. "Isn't that what you told me, that I was born to lead?" I saw the war inside him, fear for me, but respect too. After a beat, he turned back to Varek. "My Luna has spoken," Kale said. "The trial will follow our customs, with no interference." Varek dipped his head, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. "A wise decision." We'll withdraw from your hunting grounds for now and await news of the outcome with great interest." His grin returned razor sharp. After all, the stability of neighboring packs affects us all. Only when the last northern wolf disappeared into the trees did our pack finally ease formation. "You shouldn't have accepted," Kale said as we headed back toward home. "The trial of blood is lethal, even for wolves who've lived their entire lives fully awakened." "It's necessary," I replied. "You saw their faces. Half our own pack doubts me, and now they know or suspect my true heritage. If I don't prove myself, challenges won't just come from outside. They'll rise from within." Kale's expression gentled. "You already speak like a true Luna. But your wolf is newborn. You haven't even completed your first full shift." "Then I'll learn," I said quietly, forcing courage into my words. "The full moon rises tomorrow night. That gives me 1 day to prepare." By the time we reached the pack house, the storm of whispers was everywhere. News of my bloodline and the trial of blood had exploded like lightning through dry brush, igniting doubts, loyalties, and buried resentments alike. Everywhere I walked, conversations snapped shut. Eyes followed. Old grudges stirred. And the crown on my head felt heavier than ever. Rumors about the Eastern Pack echoed everywhere. Speculation, suspicion, half-whispered questions about who had known the truth and whether I had any real chance of surviving the trial. "You need training," Kale said as he guided me toward a secluded clearing behind the pack house. "Your wolf might be awake now, but she's untested." Sunlight filtered through the trees in warm streaks, striping the ground with gold. In the center of the clearing, Kyle stopped and turned to face me. "Shifting outside the full moon is one of the hardest things any wolf can learn," he explained. "But the crown cracked open your true power. We need to see if you can call your wolf at will." I nodded, ignoring the tremor in my hands. "How do I start?" "Close your eyes," he said, his voice dropping into something deeper, steadier. "Feel your wolf right under your skin. She isn't separate from you. She is you." I inhaled, letting the world fade, and there she was, no longer that frail, stuttering presence I'd lived with my entire life, but something fierce, coiled, charged with raw energy. "Now," Kyle murmured from somewhere close behind me, "focus on whatever makes you feel the most alive, the most powerful, the most you." What rose in my mind wasn't violence or strength, it was the moment in the sacred grove when I touched the crown, that bolt of recognition, like stepping back into a life I'd been stolen from. I held on to that feeling, let it fill me, and then pain ripped through me, sharp and blinding bones, shifting muscles, stretching until a choked cry escaped my throat and shifted into something animal. My hands slammed into the ground, only they were no longer hands. Pale fur swept across my skin, catching sunlight like wildfire. The agony was intense, but the exhilaration soared higher. This was nothing like the half-shifts I'd endured before. This was right. This was whole. When the change settled, I stood on 4 legs, the world exploding with new scents, sharper sounds, colors I'd never seen. Kyle watched me with open awe. "Unbelievable," he breathed. I stepped forward, tentatively, adjusting to the movement of this new body, powerful, sleek, instinctive. "Most wolves need months to do this on command," Kale said, kneeling so his eyes met mine. "Your real nature is coming back fast." A twig cracked at the edge of the clearing. My head snapped toward the sound, ears pointed forward, muscles tightening. Lena stood there clutching a leather satchel, her eyes wide. "Forgive the interruption," she said softly. "Sarah sent me with supplies for the Luna's preparation." Kyle gave her a nod to approach. As she neared, the scents from her satchel hit me, herbs, oils, and something faintly metallic that made my wolf tense. "The trial of blood requires preparing both body and spirit," Lena explained as she set things onto a flat stone. "These are traditional for Lunas." I shifted back, the reverse transformation, smoother, faster than I expected. Kyle draped a cloak over my shoulders before I could reach for clothing. What exactly happens in the trial? I asked, looking between them. You hunt alone, Lena said as she unpacked vials and herbs. You must bring down prey worthy of an alpha pair, and return with its heart still warm. The prey is your choice, Kyle added, but it must challenge you. Then Lena continued, you share the first blood with your alpha before the entire pack. It proves you can provide laid and stand as his equal. My stomach tightened. I'd never managed to catch anything more than a terrified rabbit, and even that had been luck. And if I fail? I asked quietly. Kyle hesitated. We focus on preparation first, he said, but the dark set of his jaw told me enough. Failure would shatter any claim I had as Luna, and potentially fracture his leadership for choosing me. Lena opened a vial of dark red liquid. This is bloodroot and wolf's blood flower infusion. It strengthens your connection to your wolf. Drink half now, half at moonrise. The taste hit like metal and soil and something ancient. Heat unfurled under my skin as my wolf stirred, rising higher, closer. Lena uncapped a jar of red paste. This is for marking, she said, traditionally applied by the alpha before the trial. Kale took the jar from her, his fingers brushing mine, warm, sure, steady. I'll handle it, he said. Thank you, Lena. The healer inclined her head and slipped away, leaving the clearing, wrapped in quiet again. The paste carried the sharp scent of cedars and iron undercut with something wild and ancient. This ritual goes back to the first wolves who walked these woods, Kyle said, dipping his fingers into the mixture. These markings ground your wolf. They sharpen instinct, steady purpose. He stepped close, so close, I could feel his breath warm the air between us, and I lifted my face to him. With slow, deliberate strokes, he drew a crescent moon across my forehead, a singular line cutting through it. For clarity, he murmured. His fingers slid to my cheeks, painting twin lines beneath each eye. For sight that cuts through lies. Then his touch glided to my throat, tracing a ring right over the spot where my pulse hammered beneath his fingertips. For the voice of command, one every wolf must heed. Finally, he took my hands in his marking spirals, into each palm his touch steady, sure. For the strength to claim what's yours. The paste warmed where it touched my skin, almost like it was sinking through flesh and bone, anchoring itself inside me, rather than resting on the surface. When Kale finished, he stepped back, his gaze darker, deeper, charged with an intensity that made my heart stumble. There are wolves who will do more than whisper to see you fail, he warned quietly. They'll act. Dravan, I said immediately. He's one of them. Almost certainly, Kel replied, and others who preferred the world as it was before your parents tried to unite the packs. Like Mador, I said, connecting pieces that had always been scattered. His death never made sense. Kyle nodded grimly. The wolves who fought hardest against your parents' vision are the same wolves who feared what you becoming strong would mean. They spent years keeping you small, keeping you quiet. I swallowed hard. They won't accept the Crown's decision, will they? They'll try to sabotage the hunt, he admitted. They may drive prey away, steer you into dangerous territory. His jaw tightened. Or worse. Instead of terror, a strange calm washed over me. Maybe it was Lena's infusion burning through my bloodstream. Or maybe it was finally seeing the truth of my life without the fog forced over it. Then I need more than rituals, I said, steady. I need to learn to hunt, to track, to know who I can trust. Kale's expression softened into something like pride. Good. We start now. The remaining daylight transformed into an intense crash course. Kyle taught me to follow scent, to move like a ghost through the underbrush, to predict the movement of prey from broken twigs and bent grass. My wolf absorbed the knowledge like it had been waiting for it, as though I wasn't learning new skills, only reclaiming old ones. As dusk fell, 3 wolves joined us, wolves Kale trusted beyond question. Jarek, Cade, and to my surprise, Lena. They carried weapons traditionally used in the trial of blood, a ceremonial dagger. carved with ancient runes and a curved hunting knife. The hunt must be done in wolf form, Jarek said, showing me how each blade was meant to be gripped. But you'll shift back only long enough to take the heart. It's our old way acknowledging both halves of what we are. I practiced until my arms trembled and my legs felt hollow. When I finally dropped onto a fallen log, breathless, Lena pressed a water skin into my hand. "You're adapting faster than anyone expected," she said gently. "Your bloodline is taking over." "Will it be enough?" I asked, no longer able to pretend I wasn't scared. Lena didn't lie. The trial of blood tests even seasoned Lunas. "But you have strengths your enemies underestimate, like what I asked. They still expect the girl they pushed down for years," she said softly. "But that's not who you are. It never was." Her eyes flicked toward Kyle, who stood deep in discussion with Cade at the edge of the clearing. "And you have his faith. That matters more than any training." By nightfall, we returned to the pack house. I drank the second half of Lena's infusion under her watchful eye. A simple meal followed, though I barely tasted it, my mind already racing ahead to dawn. Kyle walked me to my quarters afterward. The ritual markings he'd drawn burned dark on my skin, deep rust streaks that shimmered against the torchlight like old blood turned sacred. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow will test every ounce of strength you have." I caught his hand before he could turn away. "Why did you wait?" I asked quietly. "If you suspected the truth about me, why wait all these years?" His gaze shifted, softening with something almost painful. "I needed more than suspicion," he said. "I needed proof." His voice lowered almost a vow, and I needed power. When my father died and I stepped into the role of Alpha, countless wolves remained loyal to the old order, to Dravan's family. Kyle shook his head. "If I had acted too soon, revealed what I suspected, they would have eliminated you before I could shield you. I had to grow my strength, earn authority, build allies I could trust without question." "And the crown?" he asked, correcting me. "You knew what would happen when I touched it." "I hoped," I murmured. "The legends say it reveals true nature," he said. "I gambled it would break whatever spell held your wolf." I studied him in the dim light, the man who had watched over me from afar for years, waiting, planning, risking his own standing to restore what was mine. "Thank you," I said simply. His hand turned fingers, intertwining with mine, a gentleness surprising from someone so powerful. "From the first moment I saw you, I knew there was more to you than they admitted." Even before my father revealed the truth of my heritage, Kyle had sensed it. The intensity in his eyes made my heart race slow and steady, giving me the chance to pull back, and I didn't. He leaned forward, pressing his lips to mine. The kiss was tentative at first, almost questioning. Then it deepened as I responded, heat sparking through me, my wolf thrumming just beneath the surface, hungry and possessive, in tune with his touch. When we finally parted, both of us slightly breathless, Kyle rested his forehead against mine. "I've waited years for that," he admitted, voice low and rough. "Was it worth the wait?" I asked, surprising myself with boldness. His smile was a mix of tender and predatory. "I'll tell you tomorrow, once you've completed the trial and claimed your place as my Luna. Not just in title, but in every way." His words sent a shiver racing through me. He stepped back, regaining control. "Sleep now," he said softly. "Dream of the hunt." But sleep was elusive. My mind churned with the memory of his lips, the strength in his hands, the promise of what tomorrow might bring. For the first time, I allowed myself to crave this life, not just as inheritance, but as choice. Outside, the nearly full moon hung heavy in the sky. Tomorrow night, under its full glow, I would either cement my place as Luna or lose everything I had just begun to claim. Morning came too quickly. Pale dawn spilling through my window. I woke already, plotting my thoughts, weaving through strategy and prey through shadowed forest paths. The ritual markings on my skin had dried fully, deep rust that shimmered faintly in torchlight like living tattoos. A soft knock announced Lena's arrival with a tray of food and a steaming cup of tea. For strength, she explained as I eyed the dark brew cautiously. Just herbs this time, I promise, she added. Nothing to dull your mind or interfere with your wolf. I sipped the bitter tea while she laid out my clothing for the trial-fitted leather pants and a simple tunic, both a deep indigo mirroring the transformed moonstones in the crown. Practical, ready for shifting, easy to shed for the trial. The pack will gather at midday, Lena said as she helped me dress. Kyle will present you, then you have until sunset to complete your hunt. And the northern pack, I asked, thinking of Varric and his delegation. They sent observers, Lena admitted. 3 senior wolves arrived this morning. Unusual, but Kyle allowed it. I forced a calm confidence, feeling Lena's quiet pride. Good. Let them see their assumptions were wrong. That's the spirit of a true Luna, she said, smiling. When I stepped from my quarters, Kyle waited in the hallway. Formal attire, black trousers, and a charcoal tunic embroidered in silver patterns, echoing the ceremonial markings on my skin. The sight stole my breath. Power and grace embodied in him. His gaze warmed as it swept over me. Ready, he asked. As I'll ever be, I replied honestly. I placed my hand on his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath the fabric. Together we walked through the pack house and into the great clearing. Over 200 wolves had formed a wide circle, expressions ranging from supportive to openly hostile. Drevin stood at the front, carefully neutral, but his eyes burned with thinly veiled contempt. Near the edge, the northern pack's observers stood, a trio of stern wolves, sharp and calculating. Their presence was a clear message. The stakes extended far beyond our borders. Kyle led me to the center of the circle where Saris waited, holding the sacred crown on a velvet cushion, ancient and radiant in her hands. As tradition dictated, I hadn't worn it today. I would earn the right to wear the crown again by succeeding in the trial, or lose it forever if I failed. Wolves of the Western Pack. Kale's voice carried effortlessly across the clearing. Today we witnessed the trial of blood, an ancient rite by which the Luna proves her worth to lead alongside her Alpha. A murmur swept through the assembly. Such trials were rare in modern times, usually reserved for Lunas, brought in from outside. Some of you have questioned my choice, Kyle continued, his tone sharpening. Today, those doubts will be answered. His gaze swept the circle, lingering on certain wolves I now recognized as conspirators, the ones who had sought to keep me small to hide my true lineage. Let it also be known, he added, voice dropping to a dangerous commanding register, that any interference with this sacred trial will be treated as treason against the pack, punishable by exile or death. Drevin shifted uneasily, but he remained silent. Sarah stepped forward. Her frail frame belied the strength behind her voice. A Luna of the Western Pack, daughter of the Eastern bloodline, she said. Do you accept the trial of blood? Will you prove your worth to wear the sacred crown and stand as Luna? I do, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. Saris nodded, turning to address the pack. The trial begins now and concludes at sunset. The candidate will hunt alone without aid. She must return with the heart of worthy prey, claimed by her own hand, to be shared with her Alpha before the pack. Kyle's gaze bore into mine. Choose your hunting grounds, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. It is your right. The first test had begun. Selecting the territory would signal my confidence and strategy. Too close to the pack house and I would seem fearful or timid. Too far into the dangerous wilderness, and I would appear reckless. The eastern ridge, I announced after a moment's thought. A ripple of surprise passed through the assembly. Dense forest, steep inclines, rocky outcroppings. It was challenging terrain. But symbolically, it was fitting, honoring my newly revealed heritage. Kyle's lips curved in subtle approval. So be it. With a final nod to him and Saris, I stepped toward the circle's edge. Drevan's low, dangerous whisper reached me. You won't return from this hunt, little Omega. One way or another, I said without breaking stride. His warning confirmed what Kale had told me. Some would actively work to see me fail. Reaching the tree line, I cast a glance back. Kale stood tall, unwavering, his faith in me, radiating, even from a distance. I drew a deep breath and plunged into the forest, closing my eyes to center myself and call my wolf. The shift came almost effortlessly this time, a flicker of pain, then seamless transformation. My senses exploded. The forest became a symphony of sound, scent, and movement, far beyond human perception. I ran, reveling in the raw coordination of muscles and sinew, propelling me over the underbrush. Freedom after a lifetime of suppression. The journey to the eastern ridge took nearly an hour at a steady lope. Higher up, the forest thinned, giving way to rocky slopes and hardy pines. From this vantage, I could see much of our territory spread below the pack house, a distant cluster of stone and timber. Now came the real challenge, choosing prey worthy of an alpha pair. A deer or elk would satisfy tradition, but I needed a hunt that would silence every critic. My nose caught a distinct, potent musk. A mountain lion, apex predator. Dangerous even for wolves hunting in pairs. Perfect. I followed the scent carefully, every step measured, aware that I was tracking a formidable predator in its own territory. The trail wound higher toward caves dotting the mountainside. Fresh claw marks etched into trees and rocks confirmed the presence of a mature territorial adult. A faint scrape above made my muscles tense. I pressed low to the rocky ground, my pale fur blending with the stone eyes fixed upward, ears alert for the slightest movement. There, perched on a ledge, some 20 feet up, lounged a massive mountain lion. Its tawny coat shimmered in the sun. Male, powerfully built muscles rippling beneath thick fur, grooming itself without awareness of me. I sized the situation carefully. A frontal attack would be suicide. The cat had height, mass, strength. I needed strategy, not brute force. I moved slowly, circling, finding a path that led upward, approaching from behind and above. The climb was treacherous. Loose stones threatened to betray my presence with every step. Reaching a position above the lion, I paused, steadying myself for the strike. One chance, no more. If I missed, it would flee or turn with lethal intent. I measured the distance, leapt, and struck. Perfect timing. My jaws sank into the back of its neck. The predator yowled in pain and twisted violently to shake me off. We tumbled from the ledge, a flurry of fur claws and snarls landing with bone-jarring force. The impact stunned me for a heartbeat. Sharp claws raked my side, tearing through fur to flesh. Pain flared hot and immediate, but my wolf held fast. The fight was brutal, primal. The mountain lion was strong, but I fought for more than survival. I fought for my future, my identity, my rightful place. That desperation gave me the edge. Finally, my jaws closed around its throat with all my strength. The thrashing slowed, then stilled. The mountain lion lay defeated. I released it, stepping back, sides heaving. Blood mine and the lion's matting my fur. Only a brief pause before the next phase. Shifting back to human form, I grimaced at the gashes along my side. The ceremonial dagger strapped to my calf was my only tool for the hunt, drilled into muscle memory by Jarek the day before. I used it to open the lion's chest and extract the heart. Still warm, pulsing with residual life force, I wrapped it carefully in large leaves, shifted back to wolf form, and took the precious bundle in my teeth. The return would be treacherous. Injured, burdened, sunset approaching. Worse storm clouds rolled in, thick and heavy. Midway back, a foreign scent hit my nose, another wolf moving parallel to my path. Instinct urged speed. Caution demanded patience, likely a scout for an ambush. Soon 2 more scents joined, converging ahead. I stopped, setting the heart down briefly, nostrils flaring. These were not pack wolves. Northern pack musk. Varric Thorn had sent more than observers, hunters, intent on my failure. I quickly recalculated. 3 wolves wounded, carrying prey, confrontation would be suicide. I needed a detour. Snatching the heart again, I veered sharply east away from my original route. Time would be lost, but survival demanded it. Rain began plastering my fur to my body, turning the forest floor slick and treacherous. Lightning split the sky. Thunder rolled through the mountains. I pushed forward relentlessly, determined to reach the pack house before sunset. The dusk-deepened sky never slowed my pace. Finally emerging from the tree line, soaked, bleeding, exhausted but victorious, I saw the pack assembled in the clearing. Wolves huddled beneath makeshift shelters, eyes wide as they noted my battered, unbowed form. Kale stood at the center, tense, scanning the forest. Relief softened his expression as he spotted me. I padded forward, head held high despite the wounds. The mountain lion's heart still in my jaws, I approached Kyle and gently placed it at his feet, shifting back to human form. My tunic and pants laid out for me before my initial shift were quickly donned with Lena's help. A mountain lion. Dravan said, disbelief cracking his tone. She took down a mountain lion alone and evaded northern pack hunters on the way back. I added, voice ringing across the clearing. 3 wolves tried to intercept me and failed. Kale's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. The warning had been realized. Some would do everything in their power to see me fail. Northern hunters in our territory. The 3 official observers from the northern pack shifted uneasily, clearly blindsided by this unauthorized intrusion. We had no knowledge of this, Kale One insisted. Varric Thorn sent us only to observe. We will address this breach, Kale promised, his voice leaving no doubt about the consequences to come. Then he turned to me, expression softening. But first we complete the ritual. Sarah stepped forward carrying a silver chalice. Following tradition, I took the ceremonial dagger, slicing a portion from the mountain lion's heart and squeezing the blood into the chalice. Kyle did the same, our blood mingling with the praise. When the chalice was full, Saris raised it high for all to see. Blood of the prey, blood of the Alpha, blood of the Luna, she intoned. Life given, that the pack may thrive. Strength shared, that the pack may be protected. She handed the chalice to Kyle, who drank deeply, before passing it to me. The metallic primal taste spoke to my wolf even in human form. A ripple of energy surged through the assembly, a silent acknowledgement that the ancient ritual had been honored. The trial is complete, Saris announced. The Luna has proven her worth before the pack and the ancestors. She lifted the sacred crown from its cushion and approached. Raya, daughter of the eastern bloodline, rightful Luna of the western pack. I knelt. Rain streamed down my face, mingling with the blood and the tears I hadn't realized I was shedding. Saris placed the crown on my head, its familiar weight settling like a homecoming. Rise Luna Raya, she commanded. Take your place beside your Alpha. As I stood, Kale took my hand, lifting it high for all to see. The pack recognizes its Luna, he called. Anyone who challenges her challenges me. His gaze swept to Dravan, who hesitated, then lowered his eyes in reluctant submission. One by one the pack knelt, some eagerly, others grudgingly, but all acknowledging the power of tradition and the successful trial. Even the northern observers lowered themselves, a gesture carrying weight that would resonate back to Varric Thorn. Later, after my wounds were tended and the pack feast underway in the great hall, Kyle led me to a quiet alcove away from celebration. You did more than pass a trial today, he said, brushing a damp strand of hair from my face. You shifted the balance of power within our pack and beyond. The northern pack, I murmured, thinking of the hunters in the forest. They'll deny sending them. He nodded. Of course. But their observers saw your accusation, and their Alpha's strategy fail. It changes everything I said. For the better. Or just different. His smile held pride and predatory satisfaction. Varric will reassess his approach. He may even consider the alliance your parents once envisioned, though on different terms. The mention of my parents stirred both ache and hope. Their vision might yet endure, just not as they imagined. and not as their killers feared. Kale added, eyes darkening briefly. Drevin will step down tomorrow. I've already chosen his replacement, he continued. Who, I asked, suspicion tinging my voice. Jarek. Loyal, capable, and never part of the old conspiracy. He paused. There will be other changes, too. Those who suppressed your true nature will face justice. Not vengeance, justice. I nodded, feeling a stronger pull toward healing than retribution. And us, I asked softly. What changes there? Kyle's expression softened the Alpha, yielding momentarily to the man. That depends entirely on what you want, Luna. I reached to touch his face, feeling the strength beneath his skin, the controlled power mirrored by the force newly awakened within me. I want what I've been denied all my life, the chance to be who I truly am, with someone who sees me clearly. He turned, pressing his lips against my palm. I've always seen you, Rhea, even when you couldn't see yourself. The truth of his words echoed through the years I thought myself invisible. He had watched, waited, planning for this moment when I would claim my birthright, not as a broken Omega, but as his equal, his Luna, his partner, his mate. The pack will need time to adjust, I said, practical concerns rising to the surface. Some may never fully accept you, he replied with a shrug. They don't need to. They only need to respect me, I said, voice steady. Acceptance will follow once they see what we build together. Kale's smile carried both promise and challenge. And what are we building? I pressed. A future worthy of both our bloodlines, he murmured. A pack stronger than either the Eastern or Western could be alone. Perhaps in time the alliance your parents once envisioned. The weight of their legacy should have pressed down on me, but instead, it felt right. A mantle I had been born to wear. A destiny delayed, not denied. The crown rested heavy and familiar upon my head. The wolf beneath my skin thrummed with quiet power. The man before me, steady commanding, completed a puzzle I was only just beginning to see. The echoes of celebration drifted from the great hall. Kyle, Kyle, I whispered. My Alpha, my mate. He drew me close. Tonight, he murmured into my hair, we celebrate what you accomplished today. Tomorrow, we change the world. In his arms with my wolf humming beneath my skin and the sacred crown catching the firelight, I finally felt it, the place I had sought my entire life. Not just belonging, but rightful place. Not just recognition, but validation. Not merely survival, but the promise of truly living. The broken, rejected Omega was gone forever. In her place stood Rhea Luna of the Western Pack, daughter of the Eastern bloodline, mate to Kyle. An architect of her own destiny. As Kyle's lips met mine in a kiss, both tender and consuming, I surrendered to the certainty that everything, every trial, every secret, every shadowed fear had been leading to this. All of this was always meant to be mine.